Hello everyone, today I have a little video where I showcase some battles from a 14-game win streak in Holiday Cup using this team. And this is a fairly standard team where I use Stunfisk as a safe swap against Vigoroth and Obstagoon and other Pokemon that defeat Alolan Graveler. My thought behind this team was that Alolan Marowak was the most common Pokemon for me to face, so I designed this team so that all three of my Pokemon beats Alolan Marowak pretty good while still having decent balance against other common Pokemon. And I don't want this video to be too long, so I will just show the 5 battles that I found most interesting, and then also how the win streak died. So without further ado, let's start with the battles. So first up is Magic, and he leads with Magneton, and this is not a matchup that I'm familiar with, but all of my moves are resisted and my Stunfisk in the back absolutely walls Magneton, so I will take the chance and switch into Altaria to hopefully get my Stunfisk against the Magneton later in the game. And my opponent counter switches into Wigglytuff, which is bad but not terrible, since he let the Sky attack through. So now I will be able to farm down with Alolan Graveler and have a huge energy advantage. And Magneton, even though it resists Stone Edge, it is very glassy, so it will still deal a big chunk of damage, and then my opponent catches the second charge move on his Obstagoon, and I will just counter switch into my Stunfisk at this point, and I'm in a very big disadvantage here, but I'm still going to play it out, and my opponent uses a Night Slash, and of course I'm not shielding the first one, since if they get the boost the second one will deal more damage, but at this point I am forced to shield. Or that's at least what I thought. I could actually have let that one through and then shielded the third one, which would have been the correct play, but I wasn't sure that I could survive another Night Slash. But anyway, now I will switch into Alolan Graveler to hopefully be able to farm down the Obstagoon. But my opponent switches at the same time and throws his energy, so that suddenly gives me some hope, and I am able to farm down and then use my discharge on Obstagoon. Next up is a game against Fabiani RC, and he leads with Vigoroth, so I need to get out of there, and I switch into my Stunfisk, and he decides to stay in, and I go straight for the discharge because I want to damage this Vigoroth as soon as possible, because if I overcharge he might also overcharge and then swap out and save the energy for later, and that's a bad thing. Since Altaria struggles against Vigoroth when Vigoroth has too much energy. And then after a while my opponent switches into Frostlass, which is great for me because now Altaria doesn't have to face the Frostlass, and he even goes for the full farm down, so at this point I have a shield advantage, and I'm lucky there that I got my Volt Switch through, otherwise I would have had to shield or just let my Alolan Graveler go down to the second avalanche. But now I have 2 shields on Altaria against my opponent's last 2 Pokemon, and he reveals that it is a Obstagoon in the back. So that is pretty good for me. Not the best Pokemon, but it's still a positive matchup for Altaria, and I have an energy advantage. So here I hope to farm down before he reaches 2 Night Slashes, which is why I shield the first one, but my opponent reached a second Night Slash, so theoretically it would have been better to shield the second one. And then I switch into Alolan Graveler because I thought the Obstagoon was within range of 2 Volt Switches, but it wasn't, so it will be able to reach a charge move. But the Vigoroth and the Obstagoon are low enough for Altaria to deal with. My next opponent is Alex V Ball Smash, and he leads with Obstagoon, which is basically the same thing as Vigoroth for this team. And I switch into Stunfisk immediately, and my opponent counter switches into Frostlass. And this is a fairly common situation, it has happened plenty of times, and the way I play it is that I go straight for the discharge, since that deals more damage and the Frostlass has never shielded the first charge move. And then I double shield my Stunfisk, because that forces my opponent to double shield, or they give me the switch advantage. which is what I want when my opponent has a hard counter in the lead. So here the Frostlass overcharged slightly. Otherwise, if they throw the third avalanche immediately, the Graveler will be able to farm down with 3 Volt Switches, but not this time. So Graveler is put very low, but this is still an okay situation, because basically I will have my Altaria at maybe 60% health against my opponent's last Pokemon, but I have a fairly big energy advantage. So the last Pokemon is Golbat, and here I don't throw immediately because I want to check that I want to be sure that I can reach 2 Sky Attacks, because if I'm not able to reach 2 Sky Attacks, then Dragon Pulse is the better move to go for. But my opponent is able to farm down, and then Alolan Graveler has just enough HP to KO the Frostlass. That was games from the first 5-0 set, and at this point I have 6 wins in a row, and I go up against Yug, and he leads with Wigglytuff, which is a pretty bad lead, but at least it's not up against Altaria. So I throw my Stone Edge after 5 Volt Switches, because then my opponent is in the middle of a fast move animation, so they can't catch it on anything. And they shield the Stone Edge, which is pretty bad, but at least now Stunfisk will be able to deal with it. But I'm forced to shield here, so I'm both in an HP disadvantage and I will not have a switch advantage. So my opponent is in a great spot, but at least I could have some extra energy. So that was the only good thing that came out of that Wigglytuff matchup. So now I just hope that Altaria has good matchups against whatever he has in the back, since the best counter is likely gone. So I switch into my Altaria, and my opponent's last Pokemon is an Alolan Marowak, so this is great. Altaria is a fairly good counter to both Obstagoon and Alolan Marowak, so I will shield this Shadow Bone and just go straight for the Sky Attacks, so that it doesn't reach another charge move, and then my opponent resigns. And my next opponent is Alex115X, and he leads with Stunfisk, and this is pretty much the worst matchup that Alolan Graveler can ever have. So of course I switch immediately, and my opponent throws 1 Mud Bomb before switching out, so now I am in a very bad spot. My only chances of winning is either to win switch here, or to trust that my double shielded Altaria can take this game. So at this point I throw Mud Shots, because hopefully I can reach 2 of those, since they are cheaper than Discharge. And for some reason my opponent does not shield his Obstagoon, so even though he knows that he has the best matchup in the game, basically, he lets me have switch advantage, which is a mistake, since he knows that he has got such a dominant matchup in the back. But now this entire game got completely flipped, because Altaria has a good matchup against Stunfisk, and then Alolan Graveler will have a much better matchup against whatever my opponent has in the back, which in this case is an Alolan Marowak. So now I will save my 2 shields for Altaria and farm down, and here I have already almost 100 energy, so I will throw 1 Sky Attack, and then since my opponent still has a shield, I will wait to throw the second and third Sky Attacks until I have them, so that I can throw them back to back, because if I don't have them back to back, then there's no reason for to give my opponent an extra fast move just of energy, if I'm not able to reach 2 Sky Attacks. At this point I won 11 games before this set, and I'm at 3 wins in this set for a total of 14 straight wins, but my next opponent, Euler, really knows how to play. So at first glance I'm in a great spot. He leads Frostlass and safeswaps into Vigoroth, and I played this game several times before and won almost every time. So I know how to play this, and I will take it to the 1 shield, because then I either get both of his shields and some energy advantage, or I have my switch advantage. So I will shield now, and then force his last shield, or he will have to give me switch advantage. And usually the opponent comes back with the Frostlass here and just farms down and get like 2 powder snows of energy. But instead my opponent sends in a stunfisk with Thundershock, which actually I will be able to put it pretty low, but he's basically at 100 energy now. So this is not a good spot for me, because this stunfisk will be able to handle my Graveler in the back with basically no HP at all, because I can't farm it down with Volt Switches. So I try to reach a Mud Bomb before it, but my opponent wins the CMP tie and I'm forced to shield, and yeah, at this point it's just a disaster, because I won't be able to KO this Frostlass in any way, and my opponent goes for Shadow Ball, which is the safer KOing attack, since it deals slightly more damage than Avalanche. So all I can say about that game was that I got completely outplayed by my opponent. Excellent play. So that's it for this video, where I showcase a team that has been working great for me in Holiday Cup. Obviously I won plenty of leads in this win streak, but I want to showcase the more interesting battles where I flip the lead or a player made some mistake or good plays. And I will hopefully hit 1,000 subscribers soon, which is crazy. So if you have any suggestion for a video that I can have like a mini celebration for it, please suggest it. And thanks for watching.